He didn't shout. He didn't rebel. He simply spoke, and that was enough to split the House of Windsor down the middle. Prince William's calm, carefully measured interview on Apple TV Plus was meant to be a reflection on duty, fatherhood, and the future. Instead, it detonated like a controlled explosion under Buckingham Palace. Within hours of airing, whispers began. Within days, those whispers hardened into headlines. William and Charles have stopped speaking. What began as an exchange between a prince and a comedian, between the heir to the throne and actor Eugene Levy, has become the defining royal crisis of 2025. Because behind the polite phrasing, the laughter, and the polished tone was something raw, an heir questioning the very system that made him. And to his father, King Charles III, that wasn't introspection. It was treason in all but name. The interview began innocently enough. A conversation about family, change, and the future. But when Eugene Levy asked William how he wanted to shape the monarchy for his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, the tone shifted. William's smile stayed, but his words carried weight. "I hope we don't go back to some of the practices in the past that Harry and I had to grow up in," he said softly. "And I'll do everything I can to make sure we don't regress in that situation." A single sentence, but it landed like a thunderclap inside Buckingham Palace. Because the practices in the past, that phrase, wasn't about abstract history. It was about his own childhood. It was about distance, cold corridors, unanswered questions, and the emotional drought that defined royal parenting for generations. To millions of viewers, William's words sounded brave. To Charles, they sounded like condemnation. Betrayal, not honesty. That's how one insider described the king's reaction to the broadcast. According to palace sources cited by Shutterscoop, Charles felt blindsided, not just as a father, but as a monarch whose legacy had just been rewritten on international television. The king reportedly sat through the interview in silence, his advisors stone-faced beside him. When it ended, no one dared to speak first. "He believes William has broken a sacred code," one insider said. "You can critique the system, but not your father, not in public." It wasn't the first time Charles had been publicly wounded by his sons. But this time, it came not from Harry's fiery memoir or exile in California. It came from the son he trusted most, the one he believed would carry his vision forward. That trust, aides now whisper, has been shattered. A house divided by change. William didn't stop there. He went further, not in anger, but in principle. "Change is on my agenda," he told Levy. "Change for good. And I embrace that. I enjoy that change, I don't fear it." It was his manifesto in miniature. No slogans, no rehearsed monarchical jargon. Just an heir signaling that his reign will not be a copy of his father's. Charles, meanwhile, has spent decades building a monarchy around continuity, tradition, and quiet endurance. His idea of survival is preservation. William's idea of survival is evolution. That clash, generational, philosophical, emotional, is now the silent war defining the royal family. A former royal aide described it perfectly: Charles inherited the crown. William intends to rebuild it. But to rebuild, you first have to admit that something is broken. The silence after the storm. Since the interview aired, multiple sources confirm that Charles and William have not spoken. Not by phone. Not by text. Not even through their private secretaries. The last contact, insiders say, was an icy exchange of messages through aides regarding an upcoming joint engagement, an engagement that has since been postponed indefinitely. The royal machinery, usually so precise, is now paralyzed. Clarence House and Kensington Palace operate like rival courts. Schedules are restructured to avoid overlap. Even staff briefings have become minefields. There's no open hostility, one courtier admitted, just a wall of frost. And that's almost worse. The public will still see smiles at charity galas, ceremonies, and official events. But behind those smiles lies the oldest truth in royal history: silence is never peace. A father wounded, a son determined. What hurts Charles most, insiders say, isn't the policy talk, it's the subtext. The suggestion that his reign, and by extension his parenting, failed to protect the next generation. Charles has always seen himself as the bridge between old and new, the king who endured humiliation, rebuilt his image, and finally found acceptance. But William's interview reframed that story. Suddenly, Charles's patience looks like stagnation. His caution looks like weakness. His son's empathy looks like leadership. It's not rebellion by design, but perception is everything. And the court of public opinion has already chosen its favorite. William, for his part, hasn't apologized. He's maintained his schedule, smiled at engagements, and quietly doubled down on his agenda of modernization. He doesn't see it as betrayal, said one friend close to the prince. He sees it as evolution. You can't change the monarchy by pretending it's perfect. But inside the palace, evolution sounds like revolution. The peace walk that wasn't. There was talk, faint, wishful talk, of a reconciliation. A peace walk through Windsor, handshakes before cameras, the illusion of unity. But it never happened. The king isn't ready, one aide confided. He feels exposed. If they appear together now, it will look forced, like damage control. And Charles has always believed that real control means staying silent. That silence, however, has a cost. The monarchy has always projected unity as its armor. Without it, the mystique crumbles. The world begins to see what the walls have always hidden, not an unbroken lineage, but a family in perpetual negotiation with itself. Two kings in waiting. Charles rules. William prepares. Both know the throne will one day belong to the younger man. But right now, that inevitability feels like a curse. Every father wants to see his son succeed, a longtime palace observer noted, but not while he's still alive to watch the succession rehearsed. William's popularity, his global relevance, and his ability to speak in the language of the modern world, all of it casts a long shadow over a king who is still fighting to define his reign. And yet, William's challenge isn't without risk. Every modernizer who's ever worn a crown has walked the same line between reform and revolt. Push too far, and you alienate the institution you need to lead. Stay too quiet, and you lose the people you need to serve. The personal cost of truth. For all its grandeur, monarchy is built on one of the most fragile human emotions, pride. Pride keeps the crown polished, and pride breaks it. When William said he wouldn't repeat the practices of the past, he wasn't attacking his father. He was speaking as a man who wants to be a better father than the one the palace taught him to be. But Charles, who waited 70 years for a crown that now feels heavy with scrutiny, cannot hear that nuance. To him, those words were not progress. They were betrayal disguised as virtue. And so the silence deepens. The future of the monarchy, and the men who hold it. Both men know this standoff can't last forever. Sooner or later, duty will force them back into the same room, perhaps at a state event, perhaps at a funeral, perhaps at a coronation anniversary. Cameras will capture smiles. The public will sigh in relief. But beneath that polished choreography will remain the truth of this moment. The monarchy is evolving faster than its patriarch can accept. William is the future, says one veteran royal correspondent. Charles knows it. The question is whether he can forgive him for acting like it already started. In the end, this isn't a feud about ego or headlines. It's about identity. A king defined by endurance, and a son defined by motion. One clings to the stability of tradition, the other demands the courage of transformation. Both believe they are saving the same institution, and that's what makes this war unwinnable. Because in the monarchy, as in any family, the most dangerous conflict isn't between good and bad. It's between two people who are both convinced they are right. And now, with trust shattered and silence reigning, Britain's two kings-in-waiting stand on opposite sides of history, bound by blood, divided by vision, and trapped beneath the same golden crown that was meant to unite them.